Good morning to Anandar. Shivani,
Yes, sir.
your team is ready?
Yes, sir. We are all here, sir.
Yes. You can start your presentation. I request the 11th batch to continue with micro and biorobotics. The session is handed over to the 11th batch, and you can start your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes, Shivani.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Can you make it full screen?
I'm not able to put it in full screen because it's a PDF.
Oh, okay. No problem. I'll start.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. Good morning, all. Today I'll be presenting to you about biorobotics, or as I would like to call it, as the present and future of robotics. Next slide. So I am Ajit. I am from Production A. Something about me: I'm a software developer. Next slide. So I would always like to start my presentation with a small quote, and there you go. Next slide. Okay, great. So today I'll be talking to you about the introduction to biorobotics, biomimetics, biomimetic robots, and then the conclusion. We'll come to that later. So let us see what biorobotics are. If you just look at the words, it's just let's just try to split the words bio and robotics. Robotics is a field of study that we already know. Now bio robotics is incorporating this life into these robotics, not just directly as in the life. The concepts and nature that we see in many life forms that we try to incorporate in this robotics. Next slide. So Wikipedia defines it as the interdisciplinary science that combines the fields of biomedical engineering, cybernetics, and robotics to obviously develop some new technologies that integrate these biological concepts with mechanical systems to develop okay, so to develop more efficient communication, alter genetic information, and create machines. Of course, these are the advantages of it. The core is that we try to bring some innovations to address some challenges, solve some problems, innovate, and how we do it is the most interesting part of it. And you might have come across this new term called cybernetics. Then the definition is obviously there. To just put it in a gist, it's just something like a system that has a self-correction loop. Basically, the loop is the functions are just act, sense, and compare to the goal. Act, sense, and compare to the goal. So this is a self-correction loop. For example, if you put your let's give an example of a ship in an ocean, in a wide ocean, it has to travel to the goal. And if suppose the ship travels uh, out of the goal, the concept is that it has to automatically on its own try to compare itself to the goal and then redirect or steer it to the goal. That is about cybernetics. Next slide, please. So to just put it in layman terms, biorobotics is just another subfield of robotics, okay? That is referred to the study and making of robots, basically emulating and stimulating these living organisms, like observing them, getting what we can, and using it them. That's basically about biorobotics. So let us go deeper into this. Next slide. So the points that we want to ponder over here is that we try to address these problems, we try to solve these challenges, we try to innovate, all using these biological ideas. Okay. So if you want me to put it in Warren Buffett's must do, can do, and don't do, I'd put these addressing problems and solving challenges in the must do, their most pressing issues, and ideas to innovate in the can do. And a good thing is that there's nothing that we don't need to do. So and all of these utilizes this amazing concept of biomimicry, which I'll be covering very soon. So next slide, please. So biomimetics, this concept, again, let's just try to split the word. Bio means life, mimicry means to imitate. So yeah, put one and one together. Biomimicry is the practice of imitating life. Next slide, please. So, see, nature has tried to provide us with many inspirations to drive forward to solve more sustainable issues, solve many issues sustainably, And it's rightly said that it's just innovation inspired by nature. And we have been following biomimicry for a long time without knowing it. And now that there is a field of it, let's look deeper into it. Next. So it still wonders me that these plants, animals, microbes, humans, they have spent billions of years trying to engineer their way past this planet. 3.8 billion years. That's a very large number, and of course that has a lot of research and development with us. So we have all the data that we need to study about what made them survive, what did not make them survive. So now the solutions to these challenges are very large and small that are just around us, and yeah, we just need to look at it. Next slide. So this is one of an interesting case study that I came across while studying about biomimicry. So this train that you see is the Shinkansen train, which is the fastest train in the world, built by Japanese. So it offers a high-speed travel between the many metropolitan cities of Japan, over 200 miles per hour. So the investors are committed to this, and the trains have been going on smoothly, but there is an issue. Every time that this train passes out of a tunnel, due to the air pressure that it surrounds, it makes a sonic boom, like a large thunderclap, causing people with even let's say, a quarter mile away, having to suffer with this noise pollution. I mean, yeah, think about it. It's so fast that the noise produced is unbearable. I mean, how would the people there do their online classes? Come on. So it's a pressing issue now. And people have to come up with a solution. And then there was an engineer who was also a dedicated bird watcher. So what did he do? Observe the nature. So he sees that the kingfisher dives from the air into the water to catch fish and produces almost no splash, which you can see in this part. And it's surprising that when we model the front end of the train after analyzing the front end of the beak of kingfisher, just like the one you see in the Shinkansen revamped, we were able to reduce the noise while coming out of the tunnels. Great. But something else also was a benefit. We were able to do that with 15% less electricity while traveling 10% faster. So the stats are wonderful. When we try to imitate the living organisms that have their own way of living and their anatomy, we try to get a lot of positives, and these concepts have been applied over and over. And next slide, please. So you can see those things in most of the things, and this is the famous humpback whale. It's so special that once we started to design windmills based on the design of humpback whales, we were able to reduce we were able to increase the efficiency by a large amount, they say 20%. And if you observe a caterpillar's movement, we can compare it with that of the belt movement of the military tank. And of course, the prime example, a bird, and we made an airplane out of the design. So next slide. So all these amazing biomimetic concepts, right? Let us try to apply it in biomimetic robots. So again, next slide. So this is nothing but the robots that are built using the concept of these biomimetics. That's the foundation of it. Why we want to do it is just because we want to make these the abilities and functions copied from the living organism. And you have seen why, because they have proven to be giving us a better solution, and we have a lot of data. What might go wrong, what might go right, we have them. So why not apply it? Next slide. So this is a very interesting example and very well known. We have realistic looking biomimetic fish used to observe the ocean life. And that is done without alarming the marine life. And why do we need that in the first place? Is because we can check the pollution levels of the ocean. We can check any hazardous levels from the vessels, underwater pipelines with the help of built-in chemical sensors. And this is just one of the many examples of biomimetic robots. There are many as well. My dear friend Shiranjini will be looking at that in our presentation. Thank you.
Yes, Ajit, you have prepared your slides using which software?
Canva.com.
Pardon?
Canva.com.
Canva.
I'll type it on the chat box.
Yes. It was good. Since during your introduction you were discussed about you are interested towards making softwares. Is it right?
Yeah.
Yes. You're a software developer. you were attempted to do towards what theme? What are the softwares you developed so far?
As list, I was actually a web developer, and I'm a practicing software developer. Not much. I've been contributing to open source projects, their softwares. So I can't claim any particular software as such as mine.
Okay, fine. Then that is good. And during your discussion, you are thinking that the classes are noise pollution.
No. Point is, the noise pollution will affect online classes. So we need to reduce it. This is a pressing issue.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Okay.
Ranjini, you can continue your presentation.
Yes, sir. Okay. So, good morning, guys. I'm Sri Ranjini. So today I will be presenting on 3 cases in the recent advancements in biorobotics. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay. So, robot with a biological brain. A multidisciplinary team at the University of Reading has developed a robot controlled by a biological brain formed from cultured neurons. This cutting-edge research is the first step to examine how memories manifest themselves in the brain and how a brain stores specific pieces of data. The robot's biological brain is made up of cultured neurons which are placed onto a multi-electrode array, MEA. The MEA is a dish with approximately 60 electrodes which pick up the electrical signals generated by the cells. This is then used to drive the movement of the robot. So now I will now explain the working of the robot. Every time the robot nears an object, signals are directed to stimulate the brain by means of the electrodes. In response, the brain's output is used to drive the wheels of the robot left and right so that it moves around in an attempt to avoid hitting objects. The robot has no additional control from a human or a computer. Its sole means of control is from its own brain. Now, coming to the main objective of this robot. The key aim is that eventually this will lead to a better understanding of development and diseases and disorders that affect the brain, such as Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, stroke, and brain injury. Next slide. Okay. Cockroach turned into fuel cell. So instead of looking at cockroaches as disgusting pests, some scientists see them as potentially helpful scouts. Because of the insect's hardy constitution, these scientists envision outfitting the roaches with tiny sensors or cameras and sending them to collect data in harmful or inaccessible conditions to people. Researchers now report a small device that can generate electricity from sugar in cockroaches' blood in a step toward creating such insect soldiers. The cockroach biofuel cell is a bundle of thin carbon wires sealed inside a capillary glass tube. The cell is about 0.05 centimeters in diameter and a few centimeters long. To make up the cell's anode, the researchers coated the wires with 2 enzymes. Trehalase to break down the sugar trehalose into 2 glucose molecules and glucose oxidase to extract electrons from the glucose. To create the cathode, the researchers coated the wires with an enzyme, bilirubin oxidase, to shuttle the generated electrons to oxygen to produce water. Because the enzymes alone can't efficiently transfer electrons to and from the electrode, the researchers also added an osmium complex to the carbon wires to act as an electron shuttle. The researchers selected trehalose because of its high concentration in the blood of the cockroach. Next slide. A computer built from leech neurons. So getting leech neurons to think is the basis of a new computational system being developed by a team led by the Georgia Institute of Technology. So the team plans to create a computer that uses leech neurons to perform non-linear calculations. So far, the team has successfully prompted 2 leech neurons in a petri dish to add 6 plus 2 by using chaotic computing. The leechulator, that is leech plus calculator, built from leech neurons, can perform simple addition and subtraction. It can come up with its answer even when presented with partial information due to the ability of the neurons to make their connections. The neurons are harnessed in a petri dish by inserting microelectrodes into them. Each neuron has its own electrical activity and responds in its own way to an electrical stimulus. These features can be used to make each neuron represent a number. Calculations are then performed by linking up the individual neurons. So I now pass the baton to my next teammate Sanjay, who will be presenting biorobotics in medicine.
So can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sanjay. I'm going to talk on the topic biorobotics in medicines. There are several advancements made in medicinal field with the help of robotics, which helps to ease through our day-to-day life for both people who faces challenge physically and normal people. In that, I'd like to present on 3 topics, namely bionic arm controlled by thought. Next. Bionic eye and bionic ear. First, bionic arm controlled by thought. First, the motor cortex in the brain area that controls voluntary muscle movements is still sending out control signals even if the arm muscles are no longer available for the control. The picture shows that. Next. Second, when the arm is amputated, all the nerves that once carried signals to that limb are not removed. So, if a person's arm is gone, there are working nerve stubs that end in the shoulder and simply have nowhere to send their information. These nerves can be redirected to a working muscle group. So, when the brain sends out nerves that should communicate with the hand, the signals end up in a working muscle group instead of the no longer existing limb. This is called targeted muscle reinnervation technology. The shoulder is dissected to access the nerve endings that control the movements of arm joints like the elbow, wrist, and hand. Then, without damaging the nerves, they redirect the endings to a working muscle group such as the chest. It takes several months for the nerves to grow into those muscles and become fully integrated. The end result is a redirection of control signals. The motor cortex sends out signals for the arm and hand through nerve passageways as it always did. But instead of those signals ending up at the shoulder, they end up at the chest. To use those signals to control the bionic arm, the setup places electrodes on the surface of the chest muscles. Each electrode controls one of the 6 motors that move the bionic arm joints. When a person thinks open hand, the brain sends the open hand signal to the appropriate nerve, now newly located in the chest. When the nerve ending receives the signal, the chest muscle is connected to contracts. When the open hand chest muscle contracts, the electrode on that muscle detects the activation and tells the motor controlling the bionic hand to open. And since each nerve ending is integrated into a different piece of chest muscle, a person wearing the bionic arm can move all 6 motors simultaneously. Next, we are going to see bionic eye, artificial silicon retina. Normal vision begins when light enters and moves to the eye to strike specialized photoreceptor, light receiving cells in the retina called rods and cones. These cells convert light signals to electric impulses that are sent to the optic nerve and the brain. Retinal diseases like age-related macular degeneration and retinitis pigmentosa destroy vision by annihilating these cells. With the artificial retina device, a miniature camera mounted in the eyeglasses captures images and wirelessly sends the information to a microprocessor worn on a belt that converts the data to an electric signal and transmits to a receiver on the eye. The picture shows the inner part of the eye. Next. The receiver sends a signal through a tiny thin cable to the microelectrode array, stimulating it to emit pulses. The artificial retina device thus bypasses defunct photoreceptor cells and transmit electric signals directly to the retina's remaining viable cells. The pulses travel to the optic nerve and ultimately to the brain, which perceives pattern of light and dark sparks corresponding to the electrodes stimulated. Patients learn to interpret these visual patterns. Next, we are going to see bionic ear. A cochlear implant works by using special electronic technologies to take the place of non-working parts in the inner ear. It is designed to mimic natural hearing. There are four things. First, sound processor. Sound is picked up by a tiny microphone sensitive to the direction from which sounds come. This let it pick up more sounds from in front of the user and fewer from behind them. External sound process or captures sound and converts it into digital signals. The signals are sent across the skin to the internal implant. This is done with a technology like the way a radio station broadcasts its signals, but on a much smaller scale. Electrode array. Internal implant converts signal into an electrical energy sends into an electrode array inside the cochlear. Hearing nerve. Electrodes stimulate the hearing nerve, bypassing damaged hair cells, and the brain signals as sound. So the picture shows the bionic ear. So thank you, and I'd like to pass on to my teammate Raksha to continue.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. I'm Raksha, and I'll be talking about microrobotics. Yeah, next slide. So, what is microrobotics? Microrobotics is the field of miniature robotics, in particular mobile robots, with characteristic dimensions less than 1 millimeter. The term can also be used for robots capable of handling micrometer-sized components. A microrobot is a miniaturized, sophisticated machine designed to perform a specific task or task repeatedly and with precision. Microrobotics is a field that is getting a lot of attention today, not only from engineers specializing in the field, but also from other fields of engineering, scientists, and even the general public. Miniaturization of technology has allowed us to push further for wider boundaries towards building smaller as well as more efficient versions of these, and it has proved that small things do matter. As these micro robots become smaller and smaller, we discover more ways of applying micro robotics in many fields. Yeah, next slide. Here we'll see the history of micro robotics. The earliest research and conceptual design of such small robots was conducted in the early 1970s in classified research for US intelligence agencies. Many refer to the famous speech by Feynman on There is Plenty of Room at the Bottom in 1956 as the birth of microsystem technology. The first idea of microrobotics appeared with the emergence of an active investigation of microsystem technology. The need for targeted medicine was another favorable factor for microrobotics. The idea of microrobotics autonomously operated inside the human body first appeared in science fiction movies like Fantastic Voyage and later in 1987 a movie called Inner Space. The progress in scanning electron microscopy and in scanning probe microscopy in 1980s had also large triggering effect on development of microrobotics. Next slide. Yeah. All this inevitably lead to consolidation of new signs of microrobotics and to forming related professional communities, which happened at the beginning of 1990s. It means that microrobotics as an independent subject of scientific investigation exists for like 25 to 30 years now and gradually gains maturity. Next slide. Yeah, there has been a surge in microrobotics work in the past few years, and the field is relatively new and growing fast. This picture represents an overview of few new microrobotic technologies which have been published, along with their approximate overall size scale. Next slide. Now we'll see some of the greatest microrobots. Engineers and programmers are constantly working, dreaming up and creating tiny robots. Some emerge as an incredibly useful tools. The first picture is Kilobot. A research group at Harvard University has created a self-organizing micro-robot army. Thousands of many robots work together to perform various tasks. This project was inspired by ants. They do sort of look like little ants, tiny ants. In the second picture, it is magnetically actuated micro-robots. They move in response to applied magnetic fields. They are made to build stuff, including other robots. Even more impressive is that they could perform the task in space as their movements are not dependent upon gravity. Next slide. Next is microscallops. It is a miniature that is designed to deliver drugs and in targeted areas in our body, like the back of the eyeballs. It swims through our body fluids to reach a predetermined spot. These microscallops are still in development. Next is microbees. It is a insect-inspired flying robot. Its wings beat 17 times per second to engage in highly controlled movement. This pollination drones is an artificial substitute for natural pollinators. Next slide.
Yes,
Here,
go back, Rakshika. Go back to the past slide. And what was the purpose of microscallops?
sir, actually they are designed to deliver drugs in some specific areas in our body, like the back of our eyeballs.
Oh, fine, fine. Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, next slide. Here it is a bridge inspector. They are used to scale bridges and check them for any cracks. They can access tight spots and easily travel over bolts and rivets even when it's raining. The next is micro printer. We can keep this on a sheet of paper and it will print directly on top. It can print words or images traveling back and forth. So yeah, micro robots have been of great use, especially in cases where size is of great matter. It has a number of applications also. We'll see that in the coming slides. Yeah, that's all from my slide. Um, Shivani will take over.
Good morning, everyone. So I will be discussing about the design considerations. 1 second, so I'll take my slide. Okay, so coming to the design consideration, what do we mean by design consideration is that what kind of materials can be used for designing a micro robot and what kind of power supply and what components can be used. So starting with the materials used for fabrication, generally we use polymer actuators. That is because these can be actuated in wet conditions or even in aqueous solutions. They have a reasonable energy consumption, but they are easily deposited by electrochemical methods. So if I want to stop the actuation, I can use some electrochemicals to deposit it. Next, titanium platinum alloy. These can be used for the manufacturing of electrodes because they are highly corrosion resistant and the titanium adhesive alloys have very high fracture energy, which is up to 4,500 joule per meter square. Then we'll be using silicon substrate because it has a capability of bonding between two surfaces of either the same or different materials. We'll also be using carbon nanotubes for the assembly of aligned high density magnetic non-cores. That's because of their flexible characteristics along the normal to the tube's axis, and they're extremely strong, so they can keep the bodies or the components of the microstructure together. We'll also be using biological proteins and bacteria. These biological proteins and bacteria are of great use in today's world. So we'll see about the various bacteria that are used. Now let's discuss about the power source. Generally, power source system includes batteries, fuel cells, generators, thermoelectric generators, supercapacitors, flywheels, and a lot of non-storage options as well. But the battery source is a major challenge in developing a micro robot because a very limited power supply should be able to achieve the motion. Also, the micro robots can use small lightweight battery sources like a coin cell, and they can also scavenge power from the surrounding environment in the form of light energy, in the form of vibration, or in the form of any other chemical energy. So we'll see about the various forms in which a microbot can scavenge power from the surroundings. The microbots are also now using biological motors as power sources, such as flagellated Serratia matricen, to draw chemical power from the surrounding. Now let's discuss more about the Serratia maracescens in detail. So this is Serratia maracescens. So these species are rod-shaped gram-negative bacteria. Since the bacterium is a facultative anaerobe, meaning that it can grow either in the presence of oxygen or in the absence of oxygen, it is capable of nitrate reduction under anaerobic conditions. So now, many of us might have this doubt in our mind about how a bacteria will be able to drive a robot. So to discuss on that, these rod-shaped swimmers naturally possess a negative charge, which means they can be manipulated across electric fields. When a slimly smear of the bacteria is applied on the substrate, such as a square chip of a photosensitive material, we get a negatively charged microbot that can move around in a fluid by riding the waves of an electric field. The bacteria's whip-like flagella help to keep the robot suspended in the fluid environment while also provides a small bit of forward propulsion. The real push comes from the two perpendicular the electric fields that turn the fluid into an electrified grid. Since the bacteria are negatively charged, we can manipulate the robot simply by adjusting the strength of the current. So now in this image, if we see the object or the Serratia maracescens is negatively charged, so it is repelled by all the other positively charged objects in the image. So it is being repelled and it is being directed to the goal position based on the repulsion. So it is being directed using the electric field that is generated. So Serratia maracescens is one way of using micro WIMPs that Raksha showed, which was used to reach to the back of our eye for applying certain amount of drugs. So let's see about Mycoplasma mobile. So Mycoplasma mobile is a flask-shaped mycoplasma. So it is known for its gliding motility. Gliding motility means its ability to glide through fluid substances at the speeds as fast as 17 micrometer per second. So many mycoplasma organisms have this gliding motility, which is defined as the smooth translocation over solid surface, but none as extreme as the ability of Mycoplasma mobile. So Mycoplasma mobile is one such kind of the mycoplasma's organism. So there are several variants in Mycoplasma, and Mycoplasma mobile has the highest speed and has the most satisfying gliding motility. Mycoplasma as a micro rotary motor acts as a micro rotary motor. That is because Mycoplasma mobile is the fastest of the mycoplasma in gliding ability. It has been studied as the potential biomotor. This motor would use the chemical energy of ATP and transform it into a mechanical work by acting on a micro or nanotechnology scale. Hence, we develop an appropriate interface between the biological materials and the synthetic devices, which would put Mycoplasma mobile to use as a hybrid micro machine. The motor could later be modified to work on large scale, as previously done with the bacterial flagellum or pill. The motor would be more efficient than artificial motors and would run using glucose as fuel as well. So if this comes into use, it could be revolutionary. It is also used in some small scale robots as well. Now coming to the other biomaterials that is used for driving a microbot is Chlamydomonas and Dictyostelium. Chlamydomonas is phototoxic, which means that it is driven towards light. So if it finds any light, the entire bacteria will be driven towards that particular light. And Dictyostelium, it is driven towards specific chemical substance depending upon its chemical properties. So Dictyostelium has a lot of variants. So each of its variants will be attracted to different type of chemical substance. So assuming this to be light or the chemical substance to which the bacteria is attracted to, the trajectories of the bacteria are shown in the image. So all of these will be directed towards the particular item to which it is attracted to. Now, if we want to move a microbot, we have to apply the smear of this bacteria over the microbot, and hence when the bacteria moves towards the attracted object, it will move along with the microbot. So this is how biomaterials are used to drive micro robots. Now let's see about micro electromechanical systems. So what is micro electromechanical systems? MEMS is a technology that in its most general form can be defined as a miniatured mechanical and electromechanical elements that are made using the techniques of microfabrications. That is, we have a lot of mechanical and electromechanical systems that are available in real life. We have that can be used for normal robots. But what if we want to design a micro robots? These particular mechanical and electromechanical elements should be available in miniature size. So these are micro fabricated, and hence these are called as micro electromechanical systems. These MEMS sizes, the components of MEMS sizes, ranges between 1 to 100 micrometer, and the devices of MEMS ranges from 20 micrometers to millimeters. Okay, so the types of MEMS devices can vary from relatively simple structures having no moving element at all to extremely complex electromechanical systems with multiple moving elements under the control of integrated microelectronics. The one main criterion of MEMS is that at least some element having some sort of mechanical functionality should be present. Even though the micro actuators are extremely small, they frequently cause effects at macroscopic level. So their effect are very at macroscopic level also it can be detected. The capability to they have the capability to direct the actuators to respond by moving, positioning, regulating, pumping, filtering, and also controlling the environment for some desired outcome. Hence, a micro robot is very crucial because it has everything in one single structure. Other motor drivers are the piezoelectric motor drivers that we have seen in our industrial robotics classes very frequently. So these are mechanical forces are generated by directly applying a voltage across the piezoelectric film. The ferroelectric thin films that are typically 0.3 micrometers can establish intense electric field with fairly low voltage. So these piezoelectric motors also give us an advantage of high torque to speed ratio. Now, coming to the remotely driven by electric external magnetic field, this can be remotely driven. This type of driving system is suitable for mobile micro robots working in closed space. For example, a pipeline inspection and treatment inside human body, something of that sort. Now, coming to the design fabrication. So, we have seen how the power, how it is being powered, what kind of material has to be used for its fabrication. Now, we'll see how all these things will be put together so that it can be used in real life. Okay, so now coming to the device fabrication, generally a micro robot consists of 3 layers. After the structure, after putting in the power supply, all the microcontrollers together, we'll have 3 layers over the structure. 3 layers of polycrystalline silicon separated by 2 layers of phosphosilicate glass. So the base of the steering arm is curled so that the tip of the arm is approximately 7.5 micrometers higher than the scratch drive plate. A layer of tensile chromium is also deposited on the curvature so that it is able to withstand any kind of stress. It also consists of an array of metal electrodes on the silicon substrate. So the electrodes are insulated from the substrate by a 3 micrometer thick layer of thermal silica. So all these things, all the terms that we come across are the coatings that are made above the microstructure so that it can withstand any amount of force that is applied on it. It is also coated with zirconium dioxide for about 0.5 mm thickness. So we are done with device fabrication. Now we'll see how power is delivered in such mechanisms. So this is quite simple, where we'll use an insulated electrode on the silicon substrate. So the gray material is the silicon substrate, and we have a colorless insulated electrode. So this forms a capacitive circuit with the scratch device. So it is forming a capacitive circuit. Actuator can receive power from both the direction. So it can receive power in either of the direction, and it doesn't need two position restricting wires. Okay, so we don't need wires because it's embedded in the structure itself. So finally, we'll look into the advantages of micro robots. So they can access hard to reach places that large robots simply cannot enter. Hence, these can access through inaccessible narrow spaces and can be of great help for disaster management and in hazardous locations for planning resolution strategies and stuff like that. They are inexpensive and are unobtrusive enough to find much wider uses than larger robots. They are inexpensive, that is because all the objects that we find are very small in nature. So it's going to be in micrometers. So creating them is going to be very inexpensive. Although each micro robot is small and weak, many small robots can come together in a swarm to accomplish a task. So a swarm robots means something that comes in Endiron, where we see that all the GT robots will come together. they'll stick together to form a huge robot like a human, a snake, a ball, something of that sort. I hope most of you have viewed that movie to visualize how it works. So we have also created a robot simulation to show how swarm robots work to serve a specific purpose, which we will discuss in the later parts of the presentation along with the application. So we'll see how a swarm robot works with the robot simulation that we have created. So generally, micro robots are inspired from insects. So insects are very small, so they can pass through any object. Since they are small, so also insects have very good mobility and dexterity. Similarly, just because the micro robots are inspired from insects, they also possess good mobility and dexterity. They integrate power, locomotion, manipulation, sensing, communication, and information processing all in one single structure, which means that everything is put together in one single structure. So we are not having discrete structures for every working. We have all put together in one. So that is what makes the micro robots more unique, because everything is in one single structure. We have it all in one single structure. So thank you. So this is about the presentation. We'll see more about the advantages and disadvantages of micro robots presented by Karthik.
I request Dani Chelvan Karthik Raja to converge before 10:20 and go ahead,
Sure, sir.
Karthik Raja.
Sure, sir. Yes, sir. Next slide, please. Yeah. So good morning, sir. And I'm Karthik, and I will be presenting the topic pros and cons of both magnetic and optical microbots in a comparative method. Next slide, please. Yes, sir. First, let's get started with typical material. Here, the optical material can be typically much softer. That are more similar to biological tissue, so that they are used to mimic the natural environment for the cell growth, and also for muscle functionality. And next, it's much easier to make optical material biocompatible. So they don't have typical needs of additional embedded inside or coated outside to make biocompatible with have a higher performance of actuation. Moreover, such micro or nano material additive or coating also make magnetic material denser than optical for a 3D immersed fluid. Next slide, please. Next, compatible with biological environment, that is nothing but biocompatible. Here, optical materials are easy to make biocompatible and biodegradable than magnetic material. Although the examples reported in the literature are few, there are fewer biocompatible and biodegradable material options for magnetic microbots, and also optical materials are easy to make biocompatible and degradable than magnetic material. Next slide, please. Next, actuation performance and limitations. Here, magnetic actuation methods can create higher speed motion and force output, depending on different designs and actuation parameters than the optical one. However, motion range of both method is limited to applied magnetic field work for the focus size or motion range. And also here, higher speed and the motion and also the force output are performed by magnetic actuation method, and higher energy efficiency are performed by optical actuation method. Next slide, please. Next, scalability of fabrication. Here, optical materials are easy to make biodegradable than magnetic material, although the examples reported in the literature are few. There are even fewer biodegradable materials for the magnetic microbots. Next slide, please. Next, autonomous. That is nothing but self-propelled and self-sensing. Here, magnetic microbots can't have self-autonomy since they always have an external magnetic field force. Optical microbots can have self-regulatory autonomous behavior depending on the environment that actuate the specific polymer robot material. Yeah, next slide, please. Next, control. Way to address many robots. Here, both magnetic and optical actuation method can address multiple microbots with control signals for independent control. Depending on the addressing method, The number of robots that can be addressed in limited teams of robots only in both cases. However, they both both method can address the large number of microbots in parallel, which are limited to specific environment. Although they have been swarm control demonstration of magnetic method, swarm controls with optical method is still basic in its. Thank you, sir. Here now, Tanike Satyan to talk about applications of microbots.
Hello, sir, and hello, friends. So I'm here with an amazing topic that is application of micro robotics. I'll try to make it simple. Next slide. So before knowing before knowing the application of micro robots, we should know why do we need micro robots. So normal robots make the job of humans easy and efficient, but these micro robots are more up to something. Like they can reach places where we can't reach, and they can be applied to places where high precision is required. So I have these 6 different applications of micro robots, but there are still many more. Next slide. So the first thing is medical and surgical applications. So when I searched through the net, there were like more than 10 applications, but I just bought 2 important applications which are really fascinating. The first one is cableless magnetically driven forceps for minimally invasive surgery. So the name is little bit lengthy, so let me explain it. In the picture, we can see a gripper-like structure, right? Yes, it's of course a gripper, and the yellow one is nothing but an actuator. So the actuator actually sends some electrical signals into the gripper. So these electrical signals create some magnetic field in around the grippers. Based on the nature of the magnetic field produced, if they are like poles, the grippers come towards each other. If they are unlike poles, they come towards each other. If they are like poles, they repel, just like the poles of a magnetic bar. So based on this, we take these micro robots to places where we need to remove tumor, like brain tumor and other foreign particles inside our body, which are really very difficult to operate for the surgeons. So we take these micro robots there, we squeeze and we just pull and cut the tumor out of the organ. So the next one is capsule micro robots. So from the picture and name itself, we can understand what is it. The capsule is the micro robot itself, and inside the micro robot, there will be the drug which is to be taken to the required site inside the body. So why do we need this capsule micro robot? The main reason is that often if we follow the normal procedure of taking the pills after digestion, it goes through the all parts of the body through circulatory system. It is time consuming and it is very slow for the problem to heal. So these micro robots are taken directly to the required place. They break down and the drug is applied to the problem, and it is healed very instantly. So the next application is that side effects. Often we go to a doctor saying that, doctor, I'm having some knee joint, give me some medicine. So the doctor will prescribe some medicine. The next day we'll be ending up having some rashes or something like that. And the doctor will say, don't worry, pa, it's just some side effects. Similar to that, in case of cancer treatment or tumor treatment, the side effects are enormous and it is often very unbearable for the patients. So to reduce the side effects, these micro robots go directly to the location, and the entire drug is used to treat only that particular site. So it reduces the amount of side effects. Next slide, please. So this is nothing but amplifying of magnetic force for wireless medical tools. So usually the medical tools are driven magnetically, but the amount of magnetic field produces very little. So we have to amplify it. We can amplify it by using string transmission. This is where the Gauss law is applied. We increase the number of magnetic field lines passing through a particular area, therefore increasing the magnetic field and the output force, so that we can do the surgery more efficiently and with the required amount of force. Next slide. This is one of the most amazing and my favorite application of micro robots. Here is a picture of a spy robot. Usually the spy robots have the biology of an insect. This is because we humans generally can't identify whether it's a robot or an actual insect because of its complex structure. So the speciality of this is that it has like certain applications. For example, a police found a DNA sample at a crime spot. So he has a suspect and he wants to get the DNA sample from the suspect. So he can't directly go to his house and say, hey, I want your DNA sample, because the suspect can really try to escape, right? So what the police can do is that they can employ this micro robot, insert a syringe into his skin, and then take his blood and take the sample to the police. So this is one application. And the second one is that they can employ a tracking device under the skin of the person who is to be spied. So in this way, they can avoid. They can actually spy people to know what their actions are and what their communication is, and also to prevent certain prisoners to escape from the jail also. And they can also be used to inject toxins into the enemy during battle, almost like a biowar. So the interesting fact of this is that it is developed in US, France, Netherlands, and Israel. Why not India? Yes, in India too it is that, but officially I didn't see any news that India has been employing spy robots as of now. So they're just 20 grams in weight, and they also have a 0.15 gram camera and memory card, which is really cool. Next slide, please. So space application. This is usually the idea of NASA. What they do is that they instead of sending a rover, which is usually very heavy and consumes a lot of space, the rover during landing may cause some damages to the spacecraft, which is undesirable. So what they can do is that they can send a fleet of like hundreds or thousands of these microbots, which is very light in weight and does not cause much damage to the spacecraft. And moreover, Land Rover is terrestrial robot. So it moves on the surface of Mars, which is not even flat in surface. It's difficult for the Land Rover to move from one place to another within a limited time. So these micro robots can fly in all 360-degree direction. I mean, like thousands of micro robots, and they can take pictures and information and send it directly to the rover. So the next application is the manufacturing application. Actually, this has not been employed yet. It is about a robot. It is about a micro robot manufacturing another micro robot. Why do we actually need a small sized product for human beings? It is actually not for human beings. Once a micro robot has become needs to be done in a large scale, these micro robots can be employed to manufacture other micro robots. That is what I think it will take some time. In the future years, it may come into use. Next slide, please. So this is also a very interesting one, which my teammate Shivani has done about the swarm robots, Rolls-Royce swarm robots. It is a collaboration of the Rolls-Royce car company and also the University of Nottingham and Harvard University. The thing you see as a torch, right? A snake-like thing in the picture is nothing but a snake bot. It carries the swarm robots inside it, and it is injected into the engine of a car or an aircraft. So what these small little cars, right? Like you can see 4 cars here in the picture. They are like inspection bots. They go through the entire engine to inspect what is fault within the engine. So this is done because usually if we can't find the fault inside an engine, we usually throw it out. But it is fine if it is a car. But what if it is an aircraft? It creates a lot of huge loss for the company. So these Rolls-Royce swarm robots come into action there. And another application which I'm having is nothing but an disaster micro robot. So it is developed by the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. What it does is that it is employed during the time of hazards like earthquake. It is also a type of magnetically driven inspection bot. It goes through the small gaps to see whether there are any survivors at the required site. So the next slide. Yeah. So that's all. And in the picture, you can see, I think Rajinikanth from 2.0. And in that movie, in the climax scene, also one robot will be coming in on a pigeon. That is also a micro robot. But as of now, that we have not developed any humanoid micro robot as far as I have researched. But it will be there in the future coming years with the evolution of technology. But the important thing is that I'd like to say it in a quote. New technology is not good or evil in and of itself. It's all about how people to choose to use it. As I said, the spy robots are of good uses only, but they can be also employed for some dark side also. So along with the technical knowledge, we should also develop some righteous knowledge to know where we should apply these kind of technologies. So if it is done in a right way, these technologies are really fruitful. Otherwise, it can also make the lives of people very complicated instead of making it simple. So next, Shivani will be explaining about a project related to swarm robots. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll see how Swarm Robots works. So to give an idea about how Swarm Robots works, I created a small design. So what it does is, if we give any kind of input image, the robots, that a group of robots will come in and it will form the same shape. It will try to give the same shape by changing its orientation and position. So let's see how it works. Now I'm going to give an input image as a hexagon. So what happens is this image is processed. We have a lot of robots in our scene. So all of them will go to each of the vertices of the hexagon and it will form the same shape. So that is how a swarm robots work. They will communicate with each other and then they will together work to serve one particular purpose. Yeah, okay. That is it, sir. So this project was to explain how a swarm robot can work.
Whether it was downloaded or it was written by you, Shivani?
Yes, sir, we wrote it, sir.
In which platform? What was the backend? What was the front end?
Sir, I did it in Ubuntu Copilya Sim, sir. We use VREP.
Ubuntu is the OS and the software?
Copilya Sim, sir. It's VREP. It's a robot simulation software like ROS.
Okay, anyway, text it in the MS Team. You text it, and it was on the whole, it was a very nice presentation. There are unknown topic related to microbots revealed by the 11th batch. Whether it might be a capsule microbot or a spy robot, or it might be a micro scale-ups, or it might be a swarm robot. It was very nice, and it was a very good presentation. And thank you, Undal. We'll meet as per our schedule. We'll meet during 3rd May. We will meet and we will wind up our entire session with the 3rd May. And that's all about it. Do you have any doubts with today's presentation? Anyone has any doubts? Okay, if you don't have any other doubts, we'll wind up here. We'll meet during May 3rd. Thank you, Undal.